So let's go through question 3 and 4 of the quadratic formula application questions from yesterday's lesson. So here's question 3. It says shown as a triangle. It tells us the area. So again, we need to pick out these really important bits of information in the question. We're told the area is 19. We're given the base here. And this, look, is the perpendicular height. So this here is my perpendicular height for this particular triangle. And what we asked to do, find the value of x. And that's all we're asked to do here. It doesn't tell us to set up an equation, so it's a multi-step question. We've got to realise we need to set up an equation first. Okay, so my area here is 19, so it's definitely going to be an area question. Let's just have a think. Area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2, or half base times height, whichever way you remember the formula. So I need to do my base times my perpendicular height, and then I need to divide that by 2, and that's going to give me the answer 19. So area of a triangle, I'm told, is 19, so I can put that in on the left-hand side straight away. My base here is 8.6. Make sure you put these in brackets so that you realise as soon as you've written this down, this is going to be a bit of foil rule. We've got brackets multiplied together. We're not going to make any mistakes by not multiplying everything. So x plus 6 is the base. All of that multiplied by all of x plus 5 is the perpendicular height. And then don't forget, and quite often the most common mistake in these questions, that even if people write it down here, they forget once they get to the algebra that they need to do this halved here, this divide by 2. Okay. So there's going to be a bit of foil rule going on here. So let's do that first of all. So x squared plus 5x plus 6x plus 30, and all of that is still over 2. So let's just, I'm going to move this up, collect my like terms here. X squared plus 11x plus 30, all divided by 2. Now I could divide all this by 2 and get half x squared, 5.5 x and 15. But, you know, those numbers getting 0.5 here and 5.5 here, they're okay, but they seem a little bit more difficult to use than whole numbers. So instead of that, all I'm going to do, I'm going to multiply by 2 to get rid of this 2 here. And don't forget to do that. I need to make sure I'm doing the same to both sides of my equation. So I'm getting rid of this divide by 2 by multiplying by 2. So that's going to give me 38 is x squared plus 11x plus 30. And now, it's definitely a quadratic equation. Don't forget, to solve a quadratic, we must have 0 on one side. So let's get rid of that 38 by subtracting it. Must do the same on both sides. So then I've got 0 x squared plus 11x minus 8. And here's my quadratic that I need to look at and I need to solve. And again, we're doing quadratic formula here in these questions. So I'm going to use quadratic formula. If it was a non-calculator paper, it might still be quadratic formula, but it would tell you to leave your answer in surd form. We could have a look at doing product and sum, but again, if I look at the numbers that give me a product of minus 8, so 8 and 1, 2 and 4, none of those are going to give me a sum of 11, so factorisation doesn't work here. We're asked to find the value of x, so let's keep going with this. So a in the quadratic formula is my coefficient of x squared, which is 1. B is my coefficient of x, which is positive 11. C is my number term on its own, which is negative 8 here. So in the quadratic formula, x is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Substituting my values in, minus b, so minus 11 plus or minus the square root of 11 squared minus 4 times 1 times minus 8 all over 2a. 2 times 1. So x is equal to minus 11 plus or minus, let's sort out this bit under the square root. So we've got 11 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 8. So that's 153 all over 2. So my answers here, just going to move this up so you can see, are going to be minus 11 plus root 153 all over 2, or minus 11 minus root 153 all over 2. So let's have a look at those values. So negative 11 plus the square root of 153 all over 2. And I'm just going to move over here so I can keep it just on one sheet of paper, but you can see what I'm doing. Let me just move up here. So that's going to give me x is 0.6846, etc. Or x is equal to, let's have a look at putting that negative sign in instead. So minus 11 minus root 153 all over 2. And that's giving me a negative answer there. So minus 11.68, etc. And again, in the context of this question, if I look at this negative 11 adds 6, that's going to give me a negative length here, and so is this one. So this value, minus 11.68, I can discard in this particular situation, and then my answer here, x is going to be equal to 0. I'm going to go to 2 decimal places. It doesn't tell me in the question what to do, so I'm just going to make a decision. As long as I've told them the full answer, then as long as my rounding here is reasonable, that's okay. And this is centimetres, and that's to 2 decimal places. And because it doesn't say here, you know, if you'd given your answer to 1 decimal place here or 3 decimal places, that will be absolutely fine. But make sure you give the full answer before you do any rounding. So there's question 3, done. Last one then, the hardest one, actually, let's have a look at question 4. And I think this one, I'm just going to move this question up a little bit. I think the difficulty in this question is in the first line. Okay, so the first line of this question, is the most difficult step. And if we look here, what's happening, the 7 is divided by the whole of this m plus 9, and all of that equals to m plus 10. So that's what's happening here. I can't do anything now. If you remember when we've got algebra, I can't do anything if I've got an unknown in the denominator here. So I can't start solving this while this is in the denominator. So this whole expression needs to come out. It's not just the m, it's not just the 9. It's the whole of m plus 9 that is dividing the 7. So I need to here, sorry if you can hear the phone in the background, I'm just going to ignore that. So here we've got 7 over m plus 9. I'm going to put that in a bracket to make sure I'm going to multiply by the whole of that on the other side. Okay, so I've got 7 over m plus 9 is equal to m plus 10. This whole thing I'm going to divide by that on this side, so I need to multiply by all of that on this other side. So I need to multiply by the whole of that expression, m plus 9. Okay, so I'm multiplying the whole of this by m plus 9, so that's going to leave me with 7 on this side. And over here, again, I'm going to put this in brackets because I need to make sure that I'm multiplying all of this, m plus 10, by all of this, m plus 9. And if I didn't put my bracket in there, if I just left it as m plus 10, I think then we're in danger of only multiplying the 10 by this thing, by this bracket, whereas it has to be the whole of this right-hand side multiplied by this. And now this question is reasonably straightforward because now it's a quadratic. We can do FOIL rule here, rearrange to get equal to 0. So let's do that. But it's this first step that's really important here. Don't want the unknown in the denominator. To get rid of it, I've got to get rid of the whole of m plus 9. So multiply everything by the m plus 9. Multiply all of this by the m plus 9 to get rid of this in the denominator. Okay, let's keep going. So 7 is equal to m squared plus 9m plus 10m plus 90. So 7 is equal to m squared plus 19m plus 90. I want to get 0 on one side, so let's subtract 7 from both sides here. So 7 is equal to m squared plus 19m plus 83. Oh, sorry, 0 equals 7 minus 7, 0. That's what I'm trying to do. 0 equals m squared plus 19m plus 83. And we're asked here to give our answer to 2 decimal places. So straight away I know that factorisation is not going to work. It needs to be quadratic formula. So 2 decimal places. Let's have a look at doing that. A is equal to 1. B is equal to 19. C is equal to 83. Quadratic formula. X is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Substituting our values in, minus 19 plus or minus the square root of 19 squared minus 4 times 1 times 83 all over 2 times 1. So minus 19 plus or minus, let's sort that bracket out, 19 squared minus 4 times 1 times 83. So that's plus or minus the square root of 29 all over 2. So my two possible answers to this quadratic, x equals minus 19 plus root 29 over 2, oops, all over 2, sorry, or x equals minus 19 minus root 29 all over 2. Let's sort out those values. We're asked for 2 decimal places, so let's sort out these values as decimals. If we were asked to leave our answers as said form, that would be our final answers. But let's have a look at this. So minus 19 plus root 29 all over 2. And that's given us the answer negative 807, or from this side, let's change that to a negative, or minus 12.192. And this is just an algebra question, so it doesn't matter that my answers are negative now, that's okay. In those other questions we were doing, in all the other questions, it was in the context of some geometry, some sort of shape going on here, so we needed to think about lengths and whether the values of x that we got were reasonable. So here we were looking at lengths of triangles, here we were looking at lengths of rectangles. But in this question, it is just a quadratic equation, just an algebraic equation, so our negative answers are absolutely fine. We're asked to give our answers to 2 decimal places, so let's just make sure we round that to 2 decimal places, and the same with this one, 2 decimal places, and they're both to 2dp. That's our final answer. So that's all 4 questions from yesterday that I've gone through there, and what I would like you to do is to make sure, as I said before, that you've corrected these if you've had a go at them, and if you were stuck on them, can you make sure that you get your corrected answers into your notes, so you've got all 4 of these questions in your notes as some really good application questions to look back at next year.